Welcome to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
And welcome to the Connected Teamwork podcast, where we help leaders and teams connect more deeply to themselves, each other, and their purpose. I am your co-host, Hilke Faber, and I'm here with my co-host, Carson Heddy. Carson, how are you today?
Carson Heddy here, reporting for duty. Hilke, being with you is always a blessing and a privilege. Thank you.
Same here. Today we're doing episode 73 of this podcast, and we're talking about Connected Team Work Practice number 12, which is appreciate, support, and uplift each other, which is about giving feedback. As the Buddha says, be a light unto others. It's something that's free. You can do that. And, I think that is such an important part of leadership and being human, and so easy to forget. Like, I can walk into a dark room and forget that I can turn on the light. It's such an easy thing to forget. And I mean that when I show up at work and my email is filled with challenges or things that are not working out, or something happens in the external world. These days, we have a lot of that happening, increasingly so, it seems. And how do we show up to that, not losing ourselves, and actually finding a way to not only not lose ourselves, but also support each other, realizing that we're in this boat together. And right now, for most people, it's pretty stormy out there. Waves are crashing over and things are happening. And people are thinking about AI, layoffs, working harder, performance culture, what's happening in the world. Do I still feel safe to talk to my neighbor, etc.? There's a lot of things that are happening at the same time at the moment. So we're going to talk about how can we use this power that we as humans and leaders have to appreciate, support, and uplift? Carson, your thoughts?
I think relationships are everything, and there is no greater investment that you can make in a relationship than positively recognizing someone else and lifting them up and supporting them. I think people do far more for leaders that recognize them as opposed to those that try to manage them. You mentioned there's a lot of pressures right now, Hilke, and they're very real. And there's a quote that I picked up from the Netflix documentary, The Coach's Playbook, with Doc Rivers, where he says, pressure is a privilege. And it's true. I'd much rather have the pressure because it means that there's trust that's been put in me. But on the same token, as a leader, I've also got to really be able to modulate and control. How do I react and respond to that pressure? How do I distill that when I'm making sure that I'm having connection points with my team? It can't be driven through the pressure. It's got to be purposeful and intentional recognition and praise. I always like to say that I think appreciation is oxygen for ambition, because when you recognize effort, not just outcomes, you ignite belief and belonging. And every week I'm constantly tasking myself with how can I proactively recognize folks, and I incorporate that into the DNA of my team meetings and things of that stature. But even in the moment, you just said, Hilke, like, the recognition is free, but it also takes seconds. I'm always looking for ways where I can say, hey, that was an amazing email. Where can I help? Or really want to recognize you for, taking the baton and running with this project. Far too often we hear criticism and judgment. We need to be proactively mixing it up and going out of our way to recognize others.
Yeah, that light, that oxygen, pressure is privilege if managed well. Right? So otherwise it becomes abusive or something that leads to burnout. And we can do that. We can manage pressure well by helping to make sure that there is this sense of light and lightness in the other person. And we as leaders, or even as colleagues with each other, as peers, can do this. What I notice when I facilitate workshops and I work with teams is that the first thought that most people have about each other is, what's wrong? What are you doing wrong? What are you not doing enough? How have you not? And this, of course, is a reflection of people's self-talk. We all have this critic that just keeps going from inside to outside. When we are able to just catch that and say, oh, why did we do that? Then our gaze widens. I'm like, oh, there's this person that may not have done what I wanted them to do, or they may have a different opinion from me, or we might be in some situation that I don't know how we're going to manage this right now. But that's not everything. There is a very big piece there, and that is, we're here together. And just simply, the simplest appreciation can be, I appreciate that you are here with me. Like, Carson, I appreciate that you're here with me.
Right.
Because two humans together, especially when we're in a space of appreciation, are capable of just more than one human being. It's just always true. So that appreciation lowers our defenses, because now you know that I appreciate you, and you don't have to index on where our brain goes first when it comes to how I think you think about me, what's wrong with me. So I'm going to have to be in fear. Most people are afraid of themselves and of each other. So when we don't have to be in that space of I'm afraid of you, then all this other intelligence comes online. So tell me, Carson, how do you feel when somebody appreciates you and it's meant?
I mean, it lights you up. Positivity, appreciation, a culture of seeing others is contagious. And so, not only does it, really serve as a referendum on the fact that the things that I'm doing are having positive outcomes, but furthermore, it gets me thinking more about, wow, I'm feeling good. How can I spread this goodness? I think that's what's key, of key importance. I did a presentation last week to, about 35 managing directors in our organization in a different part of the business. And it was critical, because we are human beings. We want to be seen and appreciated. And but it was also critical for me to lead off this session by calling out the state that we're in. You hit a lot of them earlier, Hilke, where it's, there is anxiety, there's fear of layoffs, there's, how are we integrating AI into our day-to-day? What will it take away or change? And we have to be open to that. I tell people all the time, nothing good or bad lasts. And so really what we can control is how we show up, how we interact with others, but frankly, how we're investing in them and in those relationships. So when I feel seen, it makes me realize, wow, how much I appreciate that feeling and that gesture. I look at the relationship in a more positive way, but I also think about how can I give that same feeling to others that I'm interacting with.
That sense of that feeling of like, yes, I like this feeling of strength, of light, wisdom, of purposefulness. And the interesting thing is once we feel it, there's a natural inclination of not wanting to keep it to ourselves. It's very interesting that we actually, once it's lighting a flame in the room. And I noticed this with teams when we sometimes do this kind of stupid exercise, which we call picture moments. So just talk to people around the room and talk to each other about what you appreciate about them. And the first moments are always a little bit like, oh, this is like some kumbaya fest. And then it becomes clear that because, like you're saying, it's contagious. And with that contagion of positivity, of wisdom, we become stronger as a team. It's like doing a mini workout for the mind. If we want to be like going on a hike through a big challenge as a team, it's like, okay, let's do 5 push-ups together. And we're right there. That's what appreciation does. And frankly, we all need it at some point, especially when our nervous system is exposed to what it's exposed to these days. If you think about it, most of what we read, but almost 90%, maybe 95% of what we read in the news is disconcerting in some way. It doesn't matter what kind of news you read or what you think or what your what your political preference is, not fun. Then when you look at like what's happening in organizations, there's a lot of great things happening. And as you're saying, there's a lot of uncertainty. So if I am only going to be happy with you when things are going well and only happy with me when things are going well, this is going to be a tough year. So that this is saying, no, I'm choosing to see the strength in you no matter what's happening in the external world, because actually we need that. Whereas my brain indexes on everything that's wrong with the world and with me and with you, and then I go into a downward spiral. Yeah. So Carson, tell us about how this appreciation doesn't just become like kumbaya, because there's also coaching and giving feedback and holding accountable that's part of this practice.
Yeah, I think it's important as leaders to realize, as you were talking, Hilke, I'm thinking about, how can a leader really create this environment and this culture of support and uplifting? And because the reality is, it can be fairly easy to at least go down the path and create some positive momentum. But to your point, it also has to be sustainable. It's got to be done in a way that it isn't just, it isn't out of the ordinary. It's not just a kumbaya moment. And so I think it is being intentional about how you're coaching, leading with being curious as opposed to putting it out there that you have all the answers, because you don't. And, there's a lot of amazing relationships that are forged in the fire. I find that some of the greatest relationships I have in my career are ones where we had the pressure and it created diamonds. It created some great relationships, some great working dynamic. I think where we get stuck sometimes is when we get rigid or when we get reactionary and we look at, wow, it has to be done a certain way. And it doesn't. You have very unique skills and superpowers and strengths and passions, as do I. And when we can figure out the right way to use those to complement each other for the common purpose, that's when the magic happens. Feedback, as an example, it's not confrontational, and we can't look at it as such. It's got to be looked at as a contribution, not a confrontation. And so when you reframe, I'm giving this feedback in the reality that I want this person to get better. We've talked about feedback before on this show. And when I've gotten the most constructive feedback from people that I trust, yeah, you know what? It does sting in the moment. But then I realize they're right. And I look back fondly on those moments. In fact, I hold them high above many other times that I've gotten feedback from others, because that person knew me and they were right. And I needed to adjust myself, and their feedback made me better. And that's the way we have to look at it as a leader, is how can we give feedback that makes folks better? And then lastly, around accountability. Accountability is respect in action. It is, being able to say like, hey, these are the milestones that matter. How can we work together? How can I support this transpiring? What are your thoughts? It isn't about talking at someone or managing someone. It's about working with someone, regardless of titles, on the desired outcome. And if you look at these relationships as partnerships and that you're equals, I may have a different title than you do because my remit is different than yours, but we both want the same thing to happen here. So how do you view this? I believe firmly that people get in a role for a reason, and they've earned the right to be in that role and make decisions. And, we talked about this on a prior episode. Some of the most important things that I can tell my team is, I trust you. Make the decision. I will back you. I support whatever you decide here, and let them go out and do the magic. But always being there as a sounding board, or to be able to provide the level of support that they need. Those are the types of things that I think we can do to support, to uplift, and frankly, put people in a position to win every time.
That sense of being on the same side of the table, even when we give the toughest feedback. I am here. I got you. I got you. Not I'm here to kill you or to make you wrong or any of those things that we tend to do when we ourselves are in some kind of way, in some kind of fear. We're going to take a short break. After the break, we're going to explore more. How can we give really tough feedback from this energy of really being there for the other person? See you after the break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
Couple of touchstones. We talked before the break about how appreciation uplifts. It lights a light. It lights a fire, and that's contagious. And that creates a different atmosphere. And from that atmosphere, magic can happen. You can together get into a problem. And even if the problem stays, we choose appreciation. And we talked about how appreciation doesn't only kumbaya or not only niceness. There's also accountability. You said, Carson, accountability is respect in action. So let's talk about how do we give tough feedback? How do we give tough feedback from a place of appreciation? And for me, that's really about setting the context for the feedback. Think about how we feel when somebody comes up to us and says, Carson, Hilke, Peter, Mary, I got some feedback for you. Likely, part of us is going to be like, ooh, cringe. Like, oh gosh, I get a bad grade. And all this stuff in our conditioning, like of being wrong, having done something wrong, because that's such a strong judge in us, such a strong conditioning gets activated. So we need to know as feedback giver that that's what we're up against. That just saying, I have some feedback for you in most contexts is not going to be like, oh, yes, great. And can I have 2 of those, please? Like chocolate cake. No, most of us are not oriented that way, right? So we as feedback giver can set a context. I do this exercise with teams often where we sit in a circle and people receive, in my eyes, what blocks your greatness. And when I first introduced the exercise, people are like, oh no, okay, how can I just get through this hour as quickly as possible? And then what I notice is that there's an energy of deep, deep, deep care that comes online. And I think one of the reasons it comes online is because beforehand we have a conversation about what feedback is really for. Now, we don't always have all that time when we're going to give somebody feedback. I think setting a context, saying, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I want to provide you some feedback. Is this a good time? And I think this is an important question because the person might be in the middle of disease, death in family, a difficult meeting they just came out of, whatever, right? So ask them, is this a good time? So create first some context. And then provide them the framing and say, I want you to know that I am here for you, that I want to be working with you. Use your own words. I would like to take a look at this feedback together. Should we creating this framing of being on the balcony together? Like, look at this together. Not like I'm looking at you. No, we're looking at this together. And now let me share this. Just like I found something precious in the woods, and I'm just saying, look I found these nuts or stones, whatever. Look at this. What do you think? And then looking at it together and having us together draw the conclusions. So, Carson, when you are when you are giving feedback, how do you do it?
Okay, as I heard you talk, I kept thinking, my gosh, I wish this guy would give me some feedback. You made it sound so amazing. No, when I think about this, there's as often the precursor is set in motion before, because when you give feedback, ideally you've already earned the right to, you've earned trust, you have credibility with this person, and that's why it's so important to build the foundation for the relationship, because once you get to that feedback, you never want everything that you tell this person to be construed as negative. And then frankly as well, the framing around feedback is all about lifting them up. It is not about the hammer and coming in with correctional statements or devices. So when I give feedback, what I'm thinking about is, again, it's all in how you frame it, and being able to say like, hey, I legitimately care about your success. I care about you. I want to see you thrive and get everything that you want to get, that we're working on together. I think we can get even better together. This has been my observation, or this is the perception. Yeah, I've had some very challenging conversations just over the last couple of years with a couple of folks that I believe have unlimited potential. And yet there are things that they do occasionally that can alienate others, or can give an impression that I don't think they're trying to give. There's not malice intended, but it's critical importance that I let them know that, hey, these are the people that you ultimately need in your camp in order to get the promotion that you want, or to get the awards that you want, or the accolades, or the reputation. And I want to help you get that. When I sit in these rooms, I want these folks all singing your tune. But what's challenging you are these things. How can we reframe this? And so I've given them the why behind it. And I think the criticality is, number one, I've already earned their trust coming into the conversation because they know that I'm in it for them to win it. And then secondly, it's all in how you frame that up. And it's not coming out and saying, hey, stop being a jerk to everybody. It's, hey, I want you to win. And there's a perception out there that maybe there's some rigid behavior or some friction. How can we minimize that perception? It's all in how you frame it up. Make sure that you're not trying to fix, you're trying to uplift.
Fix, not uplift. I like that. And part of that, going back to appreciation, is to be deeply, deeply honest and deeply, deeply kind. And to be part of that, to hold both of those, deeply, deeply honest and deeply, deeply kind, is to communicate to the other person that I'm totally here with you. And to be totally invested in you, I also need to be totally truthful. Doesn't mean that I have the truth. There's humility in that too. But this is what I see. One of my favorite sentences in development is, take what you like and leave the rest. Take what you like and leave the rest. Like, I am not the purveyor, owner of truth. You'll be sorely disappointed in me if you think that's the case. And nobody does. Everybody has their perspective. Everybody knows the story of the blind man or women and the elephant. Well, what's the elephant? Oh, by the feet, it's like a pole. By the belly, it's like a roof. By the tail, it's like a broom. Who's right? Everybody's right. That's human beings. We don't have full view of reality. When we give feedback, we don't have full view yet. Especially when we are more of the appreciative kind. Part of being appreciative is to say, I appreciate you so much that I want you to have the full picture from what I can tell. And then you do with it what you like. Yeah. So, what is some of the tougher feedback that you've ever given somebody? And how do you do it?
I would say the toughest feedback is in scenarios where, I mean, look, it flat out might not be a fit for that person to do a job. And it takes a long time. I mean, in my opinion, if you're a good leader, I mean, it can take some time to arrive at that. But when you arrive at it, you can't take it personally. Nobody's going to go out and turn me into a pro baseball player, right? That's just not going to happen. So to turn someone into a successful leader or an effective project manager or an effective salesperson when they are not built for that is going to be quite challenging, if not impossible. And, I think with that, it comes with the utmost sense of respect. I remember one of the most challenging terminations that I ever had to do actually was with somebody who, I mean, as a person, I thought the world of this person, but the results weren't there. We had worked very diligently. And I told them point blank, I said, at the end of this, I really believe that even though this sucks today and, you have every right to hold it against me because I'm the one delivering the message. I believe strongly that this will set you on a path where you can stop worrying about trying to figure out this role and go out and seize your real destiny. Because I know you're going to do amazing things. I want nothing more than that. And if there's value that I can bring to you on that path, count me in. I can speak to your character. I can speak to your effort and your attempts. And, that I think went a long way with that relationship and with that person. Giving tough feedback, and it's never fun, and we've talked about that on this show before, we've got to get over ourselves in the process. It's not about my discomfort. It's not about, trying to even create a clone of myself. Like far too often, I think in these situations when we're giving feedback or we're coaching or we're leading, we think that we're supposed to create a clone of ourselves, but we're not. We're supposed to help people realize their fullest level of potential. And frankly, Hilke, sometimes their fullest level of potential is still not a fit for that role. And perhaps we can illuminate a path that leads them down something else. I always try to understand get right to the heart of someone's why. What is their motivating factor? What makes them tick? What are they fighting for? What are they working for? Is it to, they want to be the best at something, or are they just trying to put food on the table? And are they, is there another path that might be more advantageous? And then is there a relationship that I can help create? Or is there a light I can shine on one of their strengths or superpowers that can either make them better here on this path, or frankly, help them realize where their path should go next? And that's what I think the feedback is really all about, is making sure that they understand that, we're not in it to try to get them to do things a certain way per se. As long as, however, when you give feedback, it's the mirror test. Can that person look in the mirror afterward and is their dignity still intact? Then you've done it right.
I love the emphasis on the bigger view, the long view, as you often remind myself, also for the person. In that, I recognize when I give feedback to somebody, I see their higher intelligence, I see their higher potential, I see their higher purpose, I see their higher goal, and my job is to help be a mirror towards that. And if that means it's time to part ways, it's time to fire, that's what it means. And my intention of helping you figure out how to stay connected or connect more deeply to what your higher intelligence, higher potential, higher purpose, and higher goal might need, that's mine to help you with. That's it for today. We've been exploring team connectedness practice number 12, appreciate, support, and uplift. We have been focusing on the 12 connected team practices in these last 12 episodes. If you like to read them back, or you can find them on our website, you can also listen to them back in this podcast series. We will be continuing with this podcast, exploring the 12 connected communication practices, yes, we do like the 12 number, where we figure out how to have very, very high quality communication with each other. Today, we've been working on appreciation, accountability, coaching. Think about how you can be truly there for somebody else, especially when there's some stormy performance issues or behavioral issues to address. Thanks for listening. This was the Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 73. I was your co-host, Hilke Farber, and I was here with Carson. Any closing words from you, Carson?
Lift up others. How can you lift up someone today?
Thank you so much. See you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.